Okay, so in this part, what I would like to do is to talk about how nationalism as an ideology, but as a way of organizing political, economic, and social relations, has shaped our ideas about language, culture, and identity, including how to study it in a form that is often talked about as methodological nationalism, and which produces multilingualism or bilingualism as a deviant problem to be studied, and how that heretofore dominant framework is being stretched to its limit in our contemporary period by late capitalism, the globalized new economy, the expansion of capital in ways that make it difficult for the nation state to continue to regulate people, the circulation of people and goods, and which has limited our ability to shove under the rug the various deviances and messinesses, as we call them today, that we have been working very hard to erase up until now. And so essentially what I want to argue is not that these phenomena of mobility, of ambiguity, of messiness are necessarily new, but rather that our ability to contain them, to erase them, has shifted, and so we now actually need to attend to them in ways that we are actually fairly ill-equipped to do, because we've learned to think about things as fixed and whole and bounded. And then I will talk about some of the ways in which this has arisen in a challenge in my own work in, let's call it a discursive space of Francophone Canada, and some of the ways in which, with many of my colleagues, we've tried to rethink our research approaches and our ways of thinking about things to try to capture some of the processes that we used to not pay attention to, but which have come into the center of our lens now. So that's sort of the general plan. So what I mean by methodological nationalism is a way of understanding the social world as emergent from the largely or centrally 19th century process of the construction of nation states as a mode of constructing national markets at the phase of industrial capitalism. And I take this argument largely from Eric Hobsbawm. He argues that in the particular phase of formation of markets, the rise of the bourgeoisie and industrial capitalism within a complex set of relations emerging out of and connected to imperialism and colonialism, what we have is an emergent interest in constructing homogeneous and fixed populations, homogeneous languages, homogeneous cultures, identities, tied to particular territories with political boundaries. And as we know, schooling in particular, but also other kinds of institutions, the military, for example, have played a very important role in constructing the national citizen as a quote-unquote native speaker of a homogeneous, standardized language in ways which have necessitated active work at making languages standard, selecting which linguistic varieties will be provide the basic linguistic material to make those standards, the kinds of moral and social orders that those linguistic forms are associated with, the kinds of performances of that citizenship through language and through other kinds of cultural practices are understood to be legitimate, morally right, correct, and true in some kind of naturalized and absolute sense. And that's, if you like, in the Foucauldian sense, the regime of truth that emerged out of the construction of the nation state in ways which then produced a variety of problems insofar as what that does is to set the boundary as something that needs to be constructed, but that also needs to be both literally and figuratively policed. And so we get a lot of controlling not only of territorial boundaries, our passports, for example, are evidence of that, and despite things being globalized, I still had to stand in front of that retina screener when I came into Britain and have my eyes, I don't know what they do, but there's a picture of my eyes circulating to God knows who. So these boundaries are still policed in those ways, but we also, of course, police each other and ourselves in terms of behaviors So, I mean, I don't know if this happens to you, but my mother, for instance, drives her crazy when I mix up French and English, and she keeps saying, you know, oh, pas comme ça! How can you do this? You either speak one language or you speak the other language, and you don't mix them up. Or if I speak a more sort of Canadian French, she's not too ashamed to talk like that. So.